use the term one man's trash is another man's potpourri. That means that what somebody may not want, another person may desire. So one person may despise a townhouse, living in a townhouse, but another person may want that. And so the need for housing is as varied as people's attitudes, as people's desires. So it's hard to put a number on that. Another issue that I encountered is high-density housing does not always equal moderate income housing. A good example of that is downtown Salt Lake, where you have densities of 200 units per acre in some of those high-rises. Well, those condominiums and apartments can run anywhere from 800,000 to 2 million. Okay. On the flip side, moderate income housing doesn't always mean high density. Look at our own community. Some of the more affordable areas, I say affordable, are the areas that are in our infill zones. Those are all single-family detached on lots ranging from 5,000 to 10,000 square feet, which is not high density. So that's another issue, another variable. And then finally, every community is unique and has its own unique characteristics. For example, Tooele City is largely a bedroom community. Now, I know that the mayor and John are working to change that by bringing more industry here, but for the most part, most people live here and work in Salt Lake County. And every city has various elements as well. So take Salt Lake or South Salt Lake. That city is largely industrial. And then take Murray. Murray has light rail stations, commuter rail, has a lot of mass transit opportunities that Tooele City does not have. So basically what that means is moderate or high density housing is based upon the needs of the community. There isn't a specific number. So when looking at high density housing, one has to consider its proximity to commercial centers where people can walk to and access businesses. Its proximity to educational facilities and employment centers, and then its proximity to transportation corridors or transportation systems. In this case, our main transportation corridor is SR 36. So in regards to this land use map before you today, is this location appropriate for high density housing? It is fairly close to a major transportation corridor. It is fairly close to a commercial center. I don't know if it's close to an employment center, but that gives the City Council an opportunity with this land use map amendment to consider whether or not this use is appropriate for this property. So that's about all I have to offer for the council tonight. If you have any questions, happy to answer them for you.
Okay, any specific questions, discussion?
I don't know if it's questions or thoughts. I mean, I've lived here all my life, and so I've seen lots of changes. But the last several years, we see a lot of townhomes and different kinds of things that we didn't used to have. And so there seems to be a lot of that happening. And that's what kind of more what my question was, because we've seen a lot of apartments, between, the first ones I can think of, well, there was on the west side and over behind Macy's, and now we have a lot of them in Overlake and more being built, along with townhomes like everywhere.
Yeah.
So that was why my question was, okay, so we're going to put more townhomes there probably, right? That's what their intent is.
That's what their intent on building is townhomes.
So that's, I don't know, I mean, I have a granddaughter that bought a townhome in the D.R. Horton thing, and they're building some smaller ones next to her that are about $300,000 for the cheapest ones.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, do we need more, I guess, is the question, because they're building a lot of them, and there are others.
A lot of it comes down to market forces as well, the cost of the home.
Of course, yeah,
and
so that's
forth.
what I don't even know that answer, They're going to build them probably because they think they're going to sell them, I'm sure. So maybe, and that's where affordable income is, or for a house, something to buy for young people that are just starting out.
And I've had some conversations with builders about the types of homes that they're building. And a builder will build what people want. So people don't want a small starter home. They are interested in either a larger home or the townhomes. And that's what the builders are building, because that's what the people want to buy.
I guess maybe me wrapping my head around that's the problem. Because I look at the townhomes and there is no yard. You know, they have
Right.
10 by 10 piece of yard or
Yep.
something. It's like nothing. So maybe that's my problem. It's just I see that and they have a house to live in and maybe a place to put their barbecue.
And as long as they have a good internet connection,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, I mean, that's kind of the way the new
My
generation
granddaughter's
thinks.
tickled to death with where she
Yeah.
lives and she likes having no yard. So it's probably okay. It seems like a lot of them. And maybe it needs to be. I mean, obviously housing is expensive and it's hard to afford.
Well, that Western Acres, the large townhouse development on the north end of town, D.R. Horton is getting ready to submit their new phases for that. I guess they
Yeah.
found some water, and they're getting ready to move forward because everything that's there has sold.
Yeah, and
it's-
so my
it's
question on
doing
that
well.
one, originally that was like townhomes there and then he's going to move into single housing. Is that
Yeah,
still?
in the future phases they're working on, there'll be some phases that have some smaller detached single-family.
Right, yeah. And that's not in the next section though, that
I
there's
don't
still
think-
more
Not in the one
townhomes,
that's coming up immediately.
still more townhomes.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go for it.
First of all, I'm thinking along that same line, and for me, townhomes have a place, for sure. My son lives in a townhome, too. I'm not opposed to townhomes and apartments, but I would like to know at what rate in our community we're building townhomes and apartments, townhomes, and single-family homes. Are we like 70% single-family homes and 30% town and apartment? Or because to me, in my mind, it looks like that's all we're building, and we're going to surpass the single-family home percentage. So, but I don't like anecdotal evidence to me. I drove around town and I saw a lot of apartments. That really means nothing, you know? I mean, I would like to know what percentage of that high-density housing, I guess, we have compared to our single-family homes in the community, and at the rate, so that we can kind of see the rate they're growing. Is it an equal growing percentage, or are we top-heavy here, and, you know, or is it this way? I mean, I could be completely out of line. Maybe we don't have hardly any apartments, you know, it just looks like it 'cause that's what's being built. And so for me to make that decision, that's the kind of data I guess I'm looking for, to know what this would add to what we already have.
Okay.
Because I think there's definitely a place for apartments, there's definitely a place for townhomes. And I agree with you 100% that they are not affordable just because they're high-density housing, because I live next to some apartments that are not affordable.
Yeah.
So I guess that would help me in that decision more than just an industry standard. I agree, we're unique and we need to do what's best for us, but that would just help me wrap my brain around it. Not that I'm opposed. And my second question is, the people who are trying to develop this or get the zoning changed, do they have water?
I do not believe they have water. In fact, I'm pretty sure they don't.
Because if we go ahead with changing the land use development and then going forward with the rezone, then we're, first of all, I know changing land use doesn't mean we're going to rezone it, but it kind of does. I mean, it sends the message that we're open to that. So it kind of does. And if we're going to just change that, but they don't have water and they're not going to develop it, then why do we need to change it?
Okay. So in answer to your first question, we keep records and keep tabs on all the building permits that come in. So I can easily formulate some information in regards to the number of permits for townhomes versus single family and get you some specific numbers. Just based on my observation, I think right now we're about 60-30. I think 60% of our permits are townhomes, 30% are single family. And that's based upon the subdivisions that we have right now that are building out. We don't have a lot of single family homes or single-family subdivisions right now that are issuing a lot of permits.
And I get
But
it's
I can get
market-driven,
you-
too.
I can get you some concrete numbers on that.
Awesome.
And then in regards to the second question, it's my understanding that the developer wants to make the property more marketable. And so by changing the land use to higher density, they may be able to have a better opportunity to sell it to somebody who might have water. So they may not have the water, but they could possibly sell it to someone who can. So they don't have any kind of site plan or concept plan that they've provided because they just don't have it. They haven't invested the time or resources into doing that. But that's my understanding as to what they're looking to do.
That's helpful, thanks.
I think I shared in the last time we discussed this, that I have concerns that 1,000 North is really the only road. It goes east and west there, but there's really not a lot of roads that are going north and south in that area. We talked about that a little bit, about is there the potential for roads in that area, and it doesn't really seem like there is. So I worry that, I think this one location might be okay, but as we start to go farther east, I worry about changing any more density. My second thing is, we talk about the housing crisis and how we as a legislative body can resolve that. But I don't think we have any control to make sure that these are owner occupied and not rentals. Is there any way that as a city we can do that we can make sure that these are owner occupied rather than a potential townhouse rental subdivision?
No, there isn't.
And so that, I talk about developers a lot, but it makes me less likely to rezone something knowing that there's nothing I can do to make sure that this really is owner occupied. So I don't think this is the worst spot in Tooele for this project, but I don't think it's the best spot either. So I have concerns about that. I still think 1,000 North should have more like neighborhood commercial or something as you're going farther east. I think it's a perfect spot for it. I would be more inclined to have some of this be a neighborhood commercial or some kind of commercial property on the frontage of 1,000 North and then townhouses behind that. I would be much more inclined to approve something like that. So I'm still kind of up in the air. This is on our business meeting, but it doesn't mean we have to vote on it. We can
you can
table
always table
things,
it.
but we did put it on there just in case we are ready to vote on it. Is there any other discussion?
I'm just somewhat concerned about what will be coming in the future if this is developed out, which would mainly be the mayor's office getting phone calls about the noise, because we got a helicopter right there, and we have a fire department right there. Both of those entities make a lot of noise from time to time. And if the people that are in their townhomes or whatever it is, they could probably ask the people that live right there right now how they enjoy listening to that helicopter leave in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? And I agree with you on the road. I know we've been trying to work at potentially getting a road to go in that area that would take it that, north and tie into by Walmart. But I don't know where we are on that one, but that would give them another alley in that particular area. But I don't know. And it is close to development that's going on. It is close to a school, you know what I mean, and shopping. So with that being said, the other thing that has my concern is the fact that we are crowding that area. I mean, tremendously. It will be crowded between what's there already and then adding more to it. I don't know if that stoplight can handle it. And it's brand new. Yeah, that was just my only concerns, that's all.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Would we like to see additional, I know Andrew had shared some of the data just off the top of your head, but do we want to see additional information about townhouses to single family? I don't know, potential future roadways off of 1,000 North is something I'm interested in. I know we have that in our general plan.
Yeah,
I just don't know it off the
transportation
top
master
of my head, so. Okay, does that help? Is that?
You know, sorry, my brain went south, but there, yeah. What you talked about second.
The water?
Yeah, okay, yeah, the water. Well, that's a good question, because I don't really want to change it if they don't have water to develop the property. I really don't.
So the property's listed on Utah Real Estate right now, and it says specifically in their comment that there's no water that is being sold with it. So that would mean whoever buys it either has to have water or go get water somehow, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's just on Utah Real Estate, it says
I
that.
do understand the marketability, though, of having the zone changed already. It changes the marketability of the
It does,
property.
yeah.
But
It just seems so narrow to me between, so you have the helicopter pad right there, and then you have our house assisted living. In my mind, it seems so narrow. I've driven past it multiple times and looked at it. I just have a hard time picturing townhouses. You'd have to have an entry road right in the middle of it, I would assume. And then you'd have to have townhouses on both sides. And
Yes.
it just seems really narrow to me. Maybe it's not as narrow as my mind thinks, but I don't know.
Chairman, what's really interesting is between the west side of this property and the helicopter and the fire station, there are two strips of property in between there owned by two different entities. One of them is proposed to be a road. We hoped to get a road in when we started to build the fire station. That did not happen. So I agree that we need another way out, and it's not going down to Main Street at that intersection. If we could get some property owners to work together to get a road through there and come out by Walmart, there's owners that own property all the way down that could make that happen. And it would make all of their properties more valuable and make more sense as to what each of them want to do on their own property to develop. I think they could really help each other if we could encourage them to go talk to each other.
And I think that's where I have some concern, though, is seeing the bigger picture of what's going to happen. I think this would be too early to rezone anything before we know really the potential of this area, so.
Well, I can easily bring back the transportation plan and show you where roads are, where they're intended to go and where they're intended to connect. And then also some data in regards to the housing permits that have been issued. If that's something the city council would like me to do, I can do that for you, no problem.
I think that would be great. We'll add it on another work meeting and
Okay.
keep discussing it.
I can do that.
Okay, we'll move on to our next discussion item, which is a discussion on a land use map amendment for property located at approximately 105 East, 1000 North to reassign the land use designation from regional commercial to mixed use, presented by Andrew Agard, the Community Development Director.
So this one you've also seen before. This one is a land use map amendment for about 5 acres of property located a little farther west than the property we were just speaking about. The applicant wishes to change the land use designation of the property from regional commercial to mixed use in order to facilitate the eventual zoning that will allow the construction of what they're referring to as business lofts, which I understand to be a townhouse-style unit where the upper floor would be a residence and then the lower floor, ground floor, would be a business, such as an artisan studio, a lawyer's office, a beauty salon, and it would permit kind of a live-work type of housing on that property. In order to facilitate that, we only have one zone that permits a combination of residential and commercial, and that's the mixed-use general. We have the mixed-use Broadway zone, but the mixed-use Broadway is geographically specific to the Broadway area. So really, this property would only be a candidate for the mixed-use general. I provided in your packet a concept plan as well as some building elevations which the council has also seen. And the applicant has a representative here that could address the council if they have any questions. She also had a presentation, but with ClickShare not functioning, I'm not able to show that to you, unfortunately. But the slides that were included in there weren't far off from the slides that I had presented to you at your previous meeting. But that's what's being requested. If you have any questions, happy to answer them for you.
All right, any questions or comments?
So my question is still the same one, I guess. And is mixed use really the best zoning? Like, is there a different type of zoning that would be better for this type of development? And is there a way for us to guarantee that the business is going to remain there on the bottom? Because I I do see benefit here. I think we've all talked about the commercial. It's a terrible place for commercial because of all the things we've just talked about. So I think this is a good way to capture some of that commercial, and still a benefit to the developer to, get some housing out of there. So I get where they're coming from. It's a small piece of property. I get that, but is mixed use really the best type of zone? I know that's all we have, but is there a different type that we should have? And can we guarantee the business, I guess?
So my thoughts are the mixed-use general would suffice, but it's not the best. We could do better. We could easily either update the mixed-use general zone to address some of those things, or we could write an entirely new zoning district that's specific to this use and nail those issues with that zone. In regards to making sure that the ground floor maintains a business, we could write that into the code as part of the code, and then it would just be subject to any enforcement procedures if we discover a violation. Right now, in our current mixed-use general, there's nothing in there that addresses that.
I would rather not suffice. I would rather be the best, but.
Well, and I think I've hinted before, but I'll just say straight out that this would be an excellent opportunity to create our first form-based zone that would contain the zoning regulations and the forms and functions coming out of it that we would like to see, consistent with the missing middle principles. We have some good materials that we could draw on. It'd be a great project to bring you the exact zone you want and create something like that.
I guess I have a quick question on if we did that and put in there that a business has to remain at the bottom, businesses sometimes fold. And then if a person bought one of these townhouses with the business on the bottom and their business fold, are we saying that they have to sell their home?
That's an excellent question.
You know what I mean?
And
I don't think it necessarily has to be the same owner of the business and the living.
The idea is for it to be a single work-live space. That's not required, but that's the concept.
That's their concept, but there are many situations where that is not the case. I know of some mixed-use developments where there's just the people who live above are not related to the business at all below.
Because that would be
And we
a
could write
valid
that into a
point.
new code if that's what you're interested in.
And you said that, is it all right if she's?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you could come up.
Just to help navigate, because we've built this model in other cities and it's been successful, and you're asking excellent questions. So I just wanted to let you kind of give some advice of what other cities and how they navigated it, if you want to take that advice. Doesn't mean that's how Tooele needs to do it, but for example, we just did this product in Brigham City. It's a new product. That one was a larger mixed use. We had a very large project there with a hotel and lots of different things. But a section of these were these townhomes that had this mixed use. It is one tax ID. It is, where we have seen this product fail is when we only allow the bottom level to only be a lease and it's completely different business. And then the upstairs is an apartment. Then what happens is, in the developer's world, when we're doing a pro forma, we actually call that ground lease, the bottom part, a lost leader. Like we have to, and I'm just being forthcoming, and that's what we design, because we know, okay, that's probably not going to be as successful, but it's what will get us our apartments on the top. So, but we have shifted this. If we can do a single tax ID, that the individual now doesn't have a business lease payment and a house payment, and it's all combined in one tax ID. You can get an FHA loan, you can get a USDA rural housing loan for this, and it really makes it successful for these small business owners because it's all encompassed into one. So as far as the uses, and I don't know if this is allowed in Tooele City, so stop me if it's not, But in Brigham City, instead of them writing an entire new code, we wrote a development agreement, and it has specific uses and times, and I'm happy to share that language with Tooele City to see, like, this is what we're happy with in this space. Theirs were more called maker spaces, because they're kind of, the idea here is that we're creating a zone that's not a zone, but we're creating an atmosphere of, almost think of taking the farmers market to the next level. So a lot of these individuals that are buying these places, and this was also built in Bluffdale, and they were also the front was, they had these commercial parts, and then it was a larger development. They had townhouses back. The commercial or the mixed-use ones that had the business on the bottom sold out first. They were very high demand, and they are, and I still have checked, actually did a survey on it, they are still, occupant owned. They run their business and they live up above. Okay, so I would hesitate with Mr. McCall mentioned, like, if somebody's business fails, you don't want to make somebody else like, shoot, my business failed, this business failed, but that doesn't mean that their next business might not fail, and so maybe they just need a little bit of time to re-strategize and bring a different product to the table. And now they have an office, it's a formal office. So the development agreement on top that's attached to the project could help define your code and what's allowed and what's not, if that's allowed in your part. Yeah.
A good setting for development agreement.
So I don't know if that answered all your other questions. Yeah, so the idea of the farmer's market, not necessarily that everybody has the exact same office hour or, business hours, but that you're making this more walkable community. I don't have to go and have an office in Salt Lake to run my business. I can live and work here, and it's more affordable for me, and so I can take that off. Especially businesses now that we're seeing a large amount of, online businesses there. So now we're hosting and we're running it through our house instead. Instead of these businesses that are running through their house, they have this commercial space as well on it, and frankly, it allows the city to get the taxes for the sales tax on top of it, instead of it just being this underground part.
How do you manage parking in a development like this? Do you have an area where everyone parks, or is it just in front of the house?
So it's in front. We have extra parking. These have full driveways, plus 2-car garage, plus extra parking on the side. Some cities allow parking on the street. One thing that you guys didn't see on the last work session, you unfortunately had a older map, and that has an entire commercial lot on there that can be used for overflow parking. The other idea there is that inside of, and this would be managed more on an HOA, and I know the cities don't manage HOAs, but it would matter for the HOA of the community, and that's some of these facilities, like if they go to farmers markets, or they have a food truck, or they have a vehicle or a trailer that helps sustain their business, that they have that entire commercial lot as well. That is this overflow parking that we have. The way the dirt and the topographic of this, we are not maximizing the density with this zoning inside. So there's a lot of green space on top of that, so that it can be more of this park-like feel with it. So does that help answer some of your guys' questions of the vision of Draper? Just in that presentation, West Jordan has these, Draper has these now, Bluffdale has these, Brigham City has these, I know Salt Lake City has these, and those are just the 5 that I'm very aware of. I know it's becoming a more popular project, so,
Thank you.
Thanks.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Do we feel like we're ready? Do we need to make changes to our mixed-use zone first, or does an agreement come after all of this?
Yeah, Andrew, it appears to me this would be the land use step, and we'd handle more of those details with the rezone step. Is that?
Yeah, I agree. We can do a lot with the development agreement and the zoning after the land use is in place, and then just roll these under the land use designation.
So we would still choose mixed use for the land use, and then whatever would fit, okay.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Do they have water?
I don't know.
No, we don't on water. Our impression was with the commercial, if we provide this commercial option instead of just the housing option, that we could tap into the city water and purchase it.
Would our current policy allow that? Because
I don't think so.
we say no residential.
Yeah.
Well, we'd have to have that discussion. It would, you don't allow the purchase for residential subdivisions, and what is this? We'd need to have that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right. That concludes our discussion items.
No, we have parking
Oh,
lots.
Got one more.
Never mind, sorry. It was just,
Here's some more
Don't
from me.
discount
I
parking
took so
lots.
many notes that I missed the parking lot
Me
one.
too.
Okay, discussion item D is a discussion on proposed amendments to Tooele City Code 7-4-9, parking lots, Tooele City Code 7-19-26, park strip landscaping in commercial and industrial subdivisions, and 7-16-4, table of development standards regarding changes to the landscaping requirements for properties located in the industrial zoning district, presented by Andrew Agard.
Are we still down on the click share?
Your stuff's not showing up on,
Let's try this.
okay, click it again.
See it?
Yes.
There we are. I was in a state of cognitive dissonance without my slides, so I'm glad I've got them back. So this is an ordinance amendment proposal for the city council. I've been asked to present to the city council some proposed changes to how we deal with landscaping in our industrial zone. And this ordinance amendment, or the ordinance amendments that are proposed, would affect the 2 industrial areas that are highlighted in red on the map. That would be the old Tooele Army Depot, south of Utah Avenue, and then the Bolander properties north of 1000 North. So those are the only 2 areas that are zoned I industrial. And in researching through the code, there are 3 particular ordinances that require landscaping in our industrial areas. There is the 7-4-9, which is our parking lots, 7-16-4, which is table of development standards for commercial zones and industrial zones, and then 7-19-26, which is park strip landscaping requirements in commercial and industrial subdivisions. So what I'd like to do is just go through each one of those with what they require currently and then what the changes would require if the changes are eventually adopted. So in regards to 7-4-9 parking lots, currently there is a requirement that for parking row end caps, there shall be 1 tree plus an irrigation system. And then for the island requirement, the landscape island requirement, which is 1 for every 15 parking stalls, there's also a requirement for trees and an irrigation system. And then for a parking landscape island that runs the length of a row of parking, there's a requirement for 1 tree for every 4 adjacent parking stalls. So these are applied to all of our commercial and industrial zones. The changes that I'm proposing would be to, first of all, eliminate the tree requirement from parking row end caps. This is not to eliminate the end cap requirement, just to eliminate the trees from the end cap, as well as the required irrigation system. And then number two, eliminate landscape island requirements from all parking lots within the industrial zone. So the landscape islands, just take them out of there. The landscaping goes with it if you don't have the islands. And then to eliminate the landscaping and tree requirements from the landscape islands that run the length of a row of parking. So that would eliminate pretty much all the landscaping requirements for a parking area in an industrial zone. The next ordinance is in our subdivision ordinance, 7-19-26. And right now, it affects all commercial and industrial lots. And it requires park strips to be landscaped in appropriate non-sod ground covers, trees, and shrubs with necessary irrigation system. So we are proposing to amend the title of the code to include the LI and IS zones, because we have two industrial zones that are not heavy industrial. We have the light industrial and the industrial service. And we want those zones to maintain some of the landscaping appeal. And then to eliminate the park strip landscaping requirement for lots in industrial subdivisions. Now, I'd like to add a little more language to that requires all disturbed areas to be reclaimed with native seed mix and requires the submission of a disturbed area reclamation plan at time of site plan review. And I'll talk about those two a little bit later in my presentation. And then the current requirement for 7-16-4, Table 2, this is our development standards for all of our commercial and industrial zones. The current requirement is 15 feet of front yard landscaping. Requires a critical area landscaping plus 1%. And that also provides for financial waivers of 1% landscaping and of the 1% landscaping requirement. I'm seeing some spelling errors, I apologize. I didn't have spell check on the program I used, so please glance past those. And then provides for financial waiver of critical area landscaping requirement. This code gets a little complicated, so I'd like to kind of dive into some of these requirements and explain where we're coming from here. Currently, there is a financial waiver of the 1% landscaping requirement. Now, I was speaking with Roger earlier today, and this harkens back to a time when the city was trying to get the Walmart distribution center, which is now in Grantsville. The Walmart distribution center did not want to do any landscaping. And at that time, Roger wrote the ordinance to try and provide some relief from those landscaping requirements. Didn't do much good because, as you know, obviously it's in Grantsville now. But what this provides is if a developer does not want to install the landscaping, they can pay to the city a sum equal to the landscaping requirement by $20,000 per acre. And that money would then be utilized by the city in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan to mitigate and improve park spaces. Now, when you look at the examples that are provided by the ordinance, it says that an optional mitigation sum for a 200-acre site would be $40,000. But when you do the math for a $20,000 fee, that's not quite right. I believe that the $20,000 probably was a typo and should have actually been closer to $200. When you look at the math, for 1 acre, 1% by 200 or 20,000 actually is $200. And when you do the examples provided by the city in the ordinance, 200 by 200 acres is actually 40,000. So the fee is actually $200 instead of 20,000. If you had to charge 20,000 for 200 acres, you'd be looking at $4 million. So
That's not really relief.
that'd be a considerable landscape fee. And then for 5 acres, the fee would be $200. And so they could provide this money and then not have to put in that 1% landscaping. And then there's also the critical areas. Now, the critical areas are like storm drainage ponds, entries, employee break areas, things of that nature. There's also the same type of waiver for these critical areas. However, it's a little bit different, and at the end of it, it says that financial or budgetary difficulties shall not be considered grounds for a determination of impossibility or impracticability or for payment of critical area requirement mitigation sum. So what that says is there has to be an engineering difficulty or some other issue, like maybe slope or soil problems. It can't be a financial situation. So the proposed amendments that I've shown you in your packet do not address this. So I'm actually looking for the council's direction on how they want to proceed in regards to this element. So the proposed changes that I have currently would eliminate the 15-foot front yard landscaping requirement, require that all disturbed areas shall be reclaimed with native seed mixture, and require the submission of a disturbed area reclamation plan at the time of site plan review. So let me jump into why I think we should require a disturbed area reclamation plan. This picture was taken, last week. It's at Country View Villas Phase 2, where they've got the new roads in. And this picture is very telling. On the left-hand side, we have Great Basin wild rye grass. That is native grass. That's what we see everywhere in the fields in Utah. And it just kind of grows natively. And then you'll note that on the right-hand side, that's what happens when you have disturbed land that does not get mitigated. Those green weeds that you see are called Russian thistle, and they're more commonly known as tumbleweeds. They grow large, they dry, they snap off at the stem, and they just blow off in the wind and cause a real problem. So I think we definitely need to have some kind of a mitigation plan, because if we don't have something like that, we're going to end up with landscaping on the left versus the landscaping on the right. Now, I've lived in Utah my whole life. Utah's native landscaping does not bother me. I think it's actually quite beautiful. I love sagebrush and all those plants. But they actually have a great benefit in regards to a site. For example, native grasses and shrub root systems hold the soil and prevent water and wind erosion. They also help stormwater management by absorbing stormwater. And the native plants help prevent the germination, growth, and proliferation of noxious weeds. Going back to those pictures, Russian thistle is a noxious weed. And you've probably heard of puncture weed, more commonly known as goat heads. Scottish thistle is a noxious weed. White top is a noxious weed. And surprisingly, I'm seeing a lot of sunflowers that have popped up there. I didn't realize that sunflowers germinate when you disturb the soil, but apparently they do. So those are the changes we're recommending for the industrial landscaping. I do need some guidance from the council in regards to how do you want to proceed with the financial payments in lieu, especially that part about it not being a financial issue in order to qualify for that. So as it stands, the ordinance does permit no landscaping, but there are some qualifications there. So that's what we're proposing. I'm happy to accept your suggestions and discuss it further.
Okay, any discussion?
Well, I was the council person that this came from. You saw in the report that
Yeah.
said one city council member, and this came because of a discussion at our RDA meeting with some of our industrial developers, and it's becoming quite an expense. And to put in a lot of our landscaping requirements for these industrial areas, and it's costing water that we're having to sell to them that we wouldn't otherwise need to sell to them in an area that's completely industrial. There's no business, there aren't patrons going to purchase things. It's really just people going to work in an industrial area and coming home. So that's why it came up, to save both on water and on cost in some of the development in these industrial areas. So I don't know how we want to move forward with the landscaping, but I mean, I personally don't see a need for a lot of landscaping in an industrial area. I can see it in the critical area, like Andrew mentioned, where people are going to eat lunch and stuff. That's nice, but I don't know that we need it. I do like the idea of the payment kind of in lieu toward a park, but I don't know that it needs to be based on just a topographical area. Maybe it is just an option for them.
I agree.
If I could also point out, too, that this ordinance does not prevent them from doing landscaping.
Right.
So if they want to come in and do landscaping, go for it. So,
And maybe we leave it as is, but there is an option to pay in lieu instead of.
yeah.
I would be okay with that, yeah. Any other discussion on this
No,
topic?
I have to agree with her because some of the places that we've requested they do landscaping, they let the trees die, and it's like, we can't stand out there and stand guard and say, hey, you got to water this tree.
So to address Dave's comment, I drove out there the other day around Copart. I don't know if you're familiar with Copart. We had quite a battle with them on their frontage landscaping, trees and everything. It's all dead,
It's all dead.
Yeah,
all dead.
and that looks worse than not having it.
It would have been better with just native plants there. And again, they have no customers. You know, there aren't
Exactly.
people coming there other than their delivery trucks and, yeah.
I mean, I support all of this. The fee, like you said, I think it would be nice to have a fee. I don't know that I have a strong opinion about that right now, so.
How about the financial or budgetary difficulties being one of the criteria? Would you want me to keep that in there? Want me to strike that out? Or what's the council's opinion on that? Because typically it comes down to financial, it really does.
Right. I don't think we need that in there, really.
Yeah, I think we should scratch it.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with that? Okay. I want to speak for everyone. Roger.
Well, and I don't have a contrary point of view, but since I was part of the policy discussion that put it in there, the feeling of the council at the time was that a commercial or industrial developer's budget shouldn't drive your land use policy. You should decide the policy you want and then put that in place, and then that just has to be worked into their project budgets. But that's not to say that you can't decide that it's just not a relevant policy to you anymore. But I did want to give you the background of how it got in there in the first place.
Well, and I agree with that. I don't think we should let people, determine our policy, but I don't think our policy, in an industrial area, I just don't see the need. In a commercial area, for sure. I mean, we have people coming, we want to slow down traffic, we want it to be beautiful, we want people to shop there. But in an industrial area, I just kind of think it's a waste of water.
Well, and that applies just to that critical area
Yeah.
requirement.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So would the council like me to bring this back to them with these revisions, or just go ahead and move it through the public process, take it to planning commission? It sounds like you're okay with moving.
I'm
good with
okay
the
if it moves
process.
through the
I'm
public
good with the
process, yeah.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I will
bring
do
it
that.
back. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, that concludes our discussion items. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, which is a closed meeting. We do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting, so we will adjourn at 6:53 and then reconvene at 7 for our business meeting.